Welcome into our Game On Studios for another spring edition of the show that brings you everything that you need to know in high school sports in Bucks and Montgomery counties. I'm your host, Jeff Bideman, and joining me here at the big table this week are panelists Jen Wilgus, Drew Markle, and you notice we're minus Ed Kratz this week, who finds himself on Tim Tebow watch at another week of Eagles OTAs. All right, without Ed, we'll jump right into our hot topic this week. 15 years ago, this is not a discussion point we probably would have had, but in today's day and age of Facebook, Twitter, Kick, Vine, YouTube, Yik Yak, Instagram, it's obvious that social media has had an impact on the sports that American youth are playing these days. And Jen, as some area athletes have found, it's maybe not always such a positive impact either.
Right, Jeff. Well, I think we definitely have to acknowledge that Twitter can be a wonderful thing. Social media can be a wonderful thing, as we experienced this week with all of the weather postponements, with the state playoffs. I mean, it can be an invaluable tool in getting information out, you know, where teams are playing. I've used it to hook up with story ideas, but as an avid social media maven, if you will, I've also been mortified at some of the things I see kids tweeting. And I mean, there have been stories both locally and nationally about kids losing college scholarships or losing their spot on a college team because of something they tweeted. I mean, I get it. Like, I also have the compulsion to overshare sometimes. You want to be witty, you want to wisecrack, you know, be cool to your friends. But I mean, honestly, as a kid, you have a small margin for error. You have to keep it boring. I mean, you almost have to treat your Twitter account, if you have one, like the teams do. You know, you're a representative of your school, of yourself, of your brand, and you know, you've got to fake it till you make it, more or less. You know, play down your personality maybe a little bit and the things you might be doing extracurricularly, because you don't want people to see some of that stuff.
Sure. Well, I mean, you have the instance of the Methacton baseball player who was at Bloomsburg, playing on the Bloomsburg team, who tweeted out some derogatory comments about Monet Davis, the Little League standout from Philadelphia, and that got him booted off of the team at Bloomsburg. I know from my son's high school team that his coach sits down with them and has a discussion about how to handle social media, which 15 years ago he never would have had. And he talks about how you represent yourself, you represent the school, you represent your team, you represent your family, and you really have to watch what is said and how you say it, whether it relates specifically to a game you're playing, an opponent you might be facing, we know how that goes, and also about how you just handle yourself in the general community.
That is huge. I mean, I am really glad to hear that some coaches are taking the lead on stuff like that.
It's just another level, another layer that these coaches have to deal with, though, and you hear it, like Jen was mentioning, you hear the stories about these teams and individuals and the problems they've had with it. It just makes you wonder what's next. You know, what's the big thing that's coming that's going to be worse than this? And you know, the genie is so far out of the bottle with this, and these kids aren't getting it, and they don't realize the repercussions because they're 17 years old, and this stuff stays around forever. You know, I just, I'm not a big social media guy, and
we all know that.
And with any luck, it'll stay that way. But you know, it's very scary. You know, and just because you know what's out there and the potential for what could come down the road.
Congratulations to the Athlete of the Week and the winners of the Treetop Adventure Pass. Treetop Adventures are available at the Elmwood Park Zoo in Norristown.
It's time for our Athlete of the Week segment, and as always, we'll kick that off by honoring last week's honoree, which is senior Devin Rice. The Penridge volleyball standout grabbed 56% of the votes, far outdistancing his closest competitor. Rice and all of last week's nominees will receive a free pass to the Elmwood Park Zoo's zip line. Okay, now this week's nominees, and we'll start with Drew.
Jeff, I'm going to go with Penridge sophomore volleyball player Ben Shinichi, who had a team-high 16 kills and 3 blocks in last week's 3-0 loss to Hempfield in the first round of the state playoffs.
All right, Jen?
Well, we have to get in the way back machine here because our teams haven't played in a week. But last Thursday in the District 1 Class A championship game, Bristol shortstop Olivia D'Amedio went 4 for 5 in a 16-0 win over Friends Select as Bristol won its 5th straight district title, and that brought her to 7 for 8 in the postseason heading into Wednesday's state playoff game.
All right, and my nominee this week is an ode to our former Game On compatriot Dan Duncan, whose favorite high school athlete was Council Rock North's Brandon McElwain. And all McElwain did last week was help lead the Indians to the District 1 title. In the semifinals, he drove in 5 runs, and in the championship game, the last of McElwain's 3 putouts from right field saved the run. And then after scoring an insurance run in the top of the 6th, McElwain then came in relief of starter Noah Hartwell and got the last 5 outs to preserve the 4-3 victory. And now, pinch hitting for Ed Kratz and his selection this week. Back to you, Jen.
Well, since track and field is over, we're going to move over to boys lacrosse. CB East Ryan Brown had all 3 of the Patriots' goals in an 8-3 loss to Springfield Delco in the state quarterfinals on Saturday, capping off a great year for East.
All right. And now that you've heard our nominees, it's time for you to cast your vote to determine this week's overall athlete of the week. And you can do that by voting on our Game On homepage or visiting buckscountycouriertimes.com or theintel.com. That'll do it for this week's show and for the season. But if you're a fan of baseball, softball, boys volleyball, or boys lacrosse, be sure to check back for updated video highlights and features. And also make sure to find us on Facebook and Twitter at HS Game On. Thanks again for watching this spring, and we'll see you back in the studios in August for our first football show. Until then, have a great summer.